Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learning How to Create Better Communication in Your Marriage. Today, I am so thrilled to have someone who I actually consider a friend and someone who I really love the work that she's doing. And I haven't had a guest on the podcast in a long time, and I thought, what better way to reintroduce sharing the conversation than a dating coach. And so I would love to introduce you all to Sade Curry. Sade, say hello.
Hi, listeners. It's good to be here.
Yes, yes. So Sade is a dating coach for divorced women, and she also is the host of the Dating After Divorce podcast. Sade is certified in trauma coaching, feminist coaching, and life and relationship coaching. Sade teaches women real strategies for going through divorce with emotional balance, healing, rebuilding, and finding love again. Her coaching philosophy is to help women succeed by practicing personal leadership and autonomy in their lives, work, and relationships. Sade is remarried after divorce to her second husband, Kent Curry, and they live in St. Louis, Missouri, with their blended family of 6 children. Sade, I am so excited to talk about this because for those of you listening or watching, I want to give you a little backstory. Sade graciously had me on her podcast a few months ago. And towards the end, she just shouted, like, blurted out this great idea that, you know what, singles should really have conversations with married couples and vice versa. Married couples should really be reminded, right, by singles of some things to keep their relationships exciting and that type of thing. So the topic today, that's where it came from, was Sade's idea to have this conversation. Anything you want to say about that before we kind of jump in, Sade?
Oh yeah, that idea has been I'd been thinking about. I'd never put it out there really, but it'd been at the back of
Yeah.
my mind for a long time, just because of the kinds of things I was having to teach my clients.
Mm-hmm.
So they're older, old middle age. So my clients tend to be from 37 up to like 65,
Okay.
that range.
Yeah.
And many of them had been in marriages for a long time, got divorced, and then came back
Mhm.
into this new dating landscape, right? So it's like everything's
Yes.
different. But there were some things that I was surprised that I had to teach. Like I get teaching how to create a profile that works, the tech,
Mm-hmm.
but I was having to teach things like how to observe the qualities you want in a man,
Yes.
which we would think that would be a no-brainer, but it really is not a no-brainer. It's
Yeah.
actually the biggest part of my work. And some of those items were things that you really wouldn't know as a person dating the way our culture thinks about it. If you've never been married,
Mm-hmm.
you're evaluating for a world you have no idea.
That is so true.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
where that came from.
Yeah. And I love your approach to supporting your clients in dating after divorce, and that it really is value based. And but it's so interesting that you have that experience with your clients that they don't really quite know what to look for and observe. Did you find that more so with women who were married for longer periods of time? Was there any correlation to that or not necessarily?
It was strongest in the younger women, but it was across the board.
Okay.
Across the board, 30s, 40s, 50s, women were all making judgments
Yeah.
based on sort of like a fairy tale, but it was always on a spectrum. So some women were stronger
Hmm.
in the fairy tale than others. But I
Yeah.
realized that like even women who were, CEOs, had raised
Yes.
children, had been married, we've been socialized to think about relationships a certain way. So
Yeah.
especially the dating part of it, which is this romantic,
Yes.
romantic stage, as we call it. And I'm sure we're going to get to where the people who are married should return to that.
Right.
Um, where they were focusing too much on the romance.
Okay.
The belief, I think the subconscious belief is that if the romance is right,
Hmm.
then the marriage will be right.
Yes, yes.
And
And
not
ri-
so.
right. And we know that because both for those of you who are listening, especially if you've been with me for a while, you know that I'm also divorced and have remarried. And so that's something that Sade and I have in common. And that statement that you just said is so true because Sometimes you will meet someone and that spark, right, that you may feel romantically or that type of thing, that's not the kind of spark that's a sustainable oversharing a lifetime with someone with,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's why the work that you're doing with helping ladies out there who are dating is so important. So I know one other twist that you teach your ladies, which I really like, is to look for the green flags because
Yeah.
we always talk about red flags, right? But I love that you focus on the green flags because what I also like about the conversations that we're going to talk about later with kind of swapping suggestions for both sides is that this is coming from like a healthy minded perspective, right? And so what just get share a few examples of green flags
Oh,
that you help your ladies with. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, the green flags are they're the actual building blocks of what, you said, the sustainable
Mm-hmm.
relationship and communication. Like the building blocks, the green flags are, if you're looking in your partner, I think the frame I had used for that was looking at your partner. You have things like generosity,
Yeah.
kindness,
Yes.
consideration,
Yes.
self-awareness,
Yes.
just even proactivity. Is
Mm-hmm.
the person proactive about taking care of things in their own life and in the lives of
Right.
the people that they care for?
Yeah.
Is this person protective of the vulnerable? Like none of this has any romance attached to it.
Right.
But when you're living with and building a life with someone, this is what you need.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
who's making good decisions. Good decisions are not necessarily sexy. There are no sparks.
So true.
But we need people who are making good decisions.
Right, because over the long run, they compound. And if you're making bad ones, those compound too.
Yes, a hundred
Yes.
percent.
Yes.
Even wisdom, um, tolerance. This
Mm-hmm.
person tolerant of you being human, or
Yes.
do you have to show up as this perfect human all the time around them? Which
Yeah.
romantic scenarios tend to bring that out. Like in a romantic scenario, you're dressed up, you got your makeup, everything's great.
Yes.
He's dressed up, he's got his great car, you're going to a great restaurant, all of
Right.
that, the perfect picture.
Right.
You can't live that way forever. At some point, you're gonna wake up with morning breath. Your hair's gonna be down, you're gonna have an acne breakout, he's gonna fart.
Right.
And those are the things we don't want to think about when we're dating. Like
Yes.
I am that voice that brings my clients back down to earth
Yes.
when they're dating and says, all right, but do you want to see him naked, or is this all just about the fact that he buys you $200 dinners?
Exactly. That is so good that you help your women like make space for, seeing like allowing themselves based off of their observations, like you're saying, allow themselves to kind of sit back and evaluate for themselves, like, what would a life with this person look like to the best of my knowledge of how they're showing up right now? And I love one of the things you mentioned about just even being observant of how they are with other people and with maybe family members or that type of thing. Um, I was thinking about, I don't know if I was listening to a podcast or maybe I was reading a book, I can't remember, but they were saying that many times once we have been in relationship with someone for a long time, some of us, let me not generalize, some of us stay in a relationship with like a memory of the person who we met or maybe a few years in, but we're no longer truly in relationship with like who that person actually is. We're not asking questions. We're not being observant anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's 100%. I think that's more common than
Yes.
what I think. I think that's probably the norm. And I catch myself
Yeah. Yeah, me
that
too. Me
person
too.
in my own relationship. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, we have a memory, just in the same way that we project when
Mm-hmm.
we're dating someone, we project the future, we project who they are. People do that all the time. It's like, oh,
Right.
he's in sales. I've had women tell me, well, he's in sales. I don't want to swipe right because salespeople travel all the time.
Ah,
Like,
wow.
does this particular person
Yeah.
time?
Oh, that's so interesting that sometimes like one of your clients would pass on someone because of their preconceived notions about that person's industry.
All the time. This
Oh,
happens all the time.
interesting.
Oh, he's a doctor. They're
Mm-hmm.
too arrogant.
Ah.
Like even the
Wow.
good, what you think people want, sometimes
Yeah.
they're passing on a good thing or what might be desired because they assume that what's desired also has this flip side they
Yes.
don't want. Oh, he's never been married, so he probably isn't has commitment issues.
Wow.
I mean,
Oh my
over and
gosh.
over again, there are a lot of preconceived notions that we then project on people. And then when you're in relationship with the person, and it
Yeah.
goes both ways, where sometimes you refuse to see something because of that memory you have of the person or
Yes.
fear you have of the person, or you see things that aren't there
Yes.
because
Yep.
preconceived notion of memory or idea that you have.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, okay, let's jump into a couple. Let's just kind of riff a little bit on some of the things that we see maybe both sides, right, should learn from the opposite. Okay. So one thing that well, actually the first thing that I put down in my notes, you've already spoke on, which is connecting and building a relationship on shared values versus like maybe that initial spark. Like, of course, you want to be physically attracted to your mate, especially if you're going to be in a marriage with them. But I really believe like connecting on those shared values, which you teach, is so important because that is what makes the life partnership more sustainable.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And it would be interesting for single people to understand what does sustain. So let's say you do find the spark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
but do you know from a married person's perspective what sustains the spark?
Right.
All know that the
Yes.
spark looks very different after a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years of marriage. So it's nice that you
Yes.
found the spark now, but you're
Right.
making an assumption that the other ingredients that are required to sustain it, and
Yes.
where you don't end up in a relationship where there's no more spark and there's no more
Mm-hmm.
sexual attraction actually happens. Like,
Mm-hmm.
as a marriage coach, what do you think are those ingredients to sustain the attraction? I teach my women the elements of a more robust definition of attraction going in,
Yeah.
but I don't talk to them too much about sustaining it.
Yeah. You know what what comes up for me and actually it's one of my notes. It's actually allowing there to be some element of um like surprise or like not like you want to how should I say this? I love the idea of my husband um that there's always something maybe about me that he's curious about. Right. And I think that's a really kind of fun way and not like in a weird way, like, why isn't she coming home tonight? Not like that, right? But in a healthy way. I think that's a really kind of fun way to keep things interesting,
Mhm.
right? Because I love like trying new things and I just feel like every so many years I just change as a person, and I think he may have different thoughts about that, but for the most part, I feel like that's a fun way to keep the spark is that, I kind of keep you on your toes a little bit.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
100%. I think I keep my husband way too much on more on his toes than he
Then
than he thought he was signing up for.
then he's ready for.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the fact that I just got back from a 10-day silent meditation retreat,
Oh,
which was
wow.
kind of insane and intense and the craziest thing I've ever done. And
Wow.
and I sometimes I wonder what he's really thinking about the fact that I did that.
Yes. Yes. You're gonna have to ask because I would love to know what he thinks about that, what he truly thinks about it.
Yeah, it was 100% supportive. I know when I left, he texted me and said, "I'm glad you're doing something that challenges you." But
Yeah.
but this retreat had so many weird elements to it.
Like what?
Well, so it was 10 days, 10 full days with travel on either side. So basically
Okay.
your arrival day as a day. It was
Yeah.
10 days. You didn't speak to any of the other attendees. You could speak to the management, if you need a toilet paper or whatever. You could
Okay.
speak to
Yeah.
the teachers who were teaching the meditation. You could clarify, you could process with them. And so
Okay.
I was sharing a suite with another woman and
Hmm.
say hello. couldn't make eye contact, couldn't gesture, couldn't send
Wow.
notes. You were just supposed to be in your own like bubble, in your own like little space, thinking about yourself and letting other people have their experience.
Wow.
Um, we meditated minimum 6 hours a day. So the mandatory sessions were six
Oh
of
my
those.
goodness,
And
Sade.
then another optional 4 hours of meditation.
That is impressive.
Well, I mean, that I didn't, what I didn't do all of them. I didn't do 10 hours a day. The
But
gong in the
still.
morning went off at 4 in the morning for the first session of med. It was just all kinds. You couldn't have a phone,
Okay.
no phone, no writing materials, no reading material. And then I found this out when I got there. They were like, "Oh yeah, and we'd like to have your car keys too."
They don't want you to take
Oh
off.
my
You have to turn in your car keys.
God. I had actually, I knew I was gonna have to turn in my phone, but I had hidden
Oh
a
my
note
God.
car.
Uh-huh.
Any kind of horror
Oh,
story kind of situations.
right.
I have a phone in the car. And then they took
Yes.
the car keys. I was like, okay, well, there you go. This is it.
Oh, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's based in a Buddhist philosophy. The teacher was actually Hindu,
Okay.
um, which is really interesting because I heard so much about my faith, Christianity in the teaching. I was like, well, how are people
Yes.
using different names for these things? Because I was like, well, but that scripture says that, and that scripture says
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And then my husband is fun. I guess you could say fundamentalist Christians is
Uh-huh.
Pentecostal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
first of all, I'm
Yeah.
already way over here. Then I'm going for this other thing. I'm like, he's got to be like just shaking his head every other day.
Oh my gosh, but Sade, there are so many things that I love about you sharing that because it's actually another item on my list and it kind of still answers your question about what can married couples do. I said, don't put all your focus, attention, and expectations on the other person. And what you just shared there that you did was a really good example of that, right? Because I think sometimes when we're dating, and especially if we've had like a dry spell or whatever and we find someone and there's someone that we like, we can just be consumed by it. And so I love that, as a married woman, a mom and a wife, right, some of the labels that many of us women will tell ourselves why we can't do things like that, right, especially I feel like the mom card. I love that you like take the time to pour into yourself in that way and put some of the focus and attention on yourself. I think that's enough. Yeah, I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it really does make a difference in the relationship. It makes a
Hmm.
difference to be able to miss each other a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Which is not something when you're dating, you want to be with the person all of the time. And it can
Hmm.
be hard to know if you have a relationship where you're going to give each other space.
Right. Right.
Right. And so because you do want to be with each other all the time, those early days. So one of the things I, tell my clients is, okay, like what does it look like when you go off with your girlfriends? Or are you still making time for your girlfriends?
Right.
Is he making time for friends? Does he have any friends? And so little signs that
Yes.
show that the relationship has the capacity to sustain, appropriate space after your marriage. I
Hmm.
guess another thing, to look at from both sides.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. And I'm gonna have to talk to you later on about this retreat because that's so intriguing to me. I knew you were going on it, but I didn't know it was that.
It
That's
was intense.
wow. That and okay, this is the last question I have about the retreat. This was your second time? You said that
First time
okay.
on this kind of retreat. I mean, I've done, Christian, but as a young person, I haven't done a retreat in, gosh, probably a couple of decades actually. To
Okay.
conferences and things, but this was the
Yeah.
first retreat, and I think I picked the hardest kind.
You did. No phone, no car, no eye
Yeah,
contact. Like
yeah.
that's
And then they come
hardcore.
get you for like if you decide you're not going for a meditation session, if it's a mandatory, they'll come get you. They'll be like, oh,
Oh,
but they come in this soft voice, like,
of course. Right.
oh my God.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love it. Okay. Another thing here that I want to hear your perspective and like what you experience with your singles. I say it's okay to drop the rope sometimes. Like not every invitation for an argument needs to be accepted. What
Mm.
does that look like with some of your clients in the dating period when they have hit that moment where they have their first disagreement, or maybe it's a like flat out argument, however they want to describe it? How are you like coaching some of your clients through that?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because often I find women trying to apply marriage principles to date
Mm,
in places where they
mm.
don't work. And
Okay. Oh
so
yeah, give us an example. Yeah.
they'll meet someone and they're like, "Oh, I like all these things about him. Um, he doesn't do this one thing, but you have to negotiate some things, right? Or you have to compromise,
Mm-hmm.
right?" I'm like, "Not now. This is not the compromise space."
Mm-hmm.
Just met
Mm-hmm.
this person.
Yes.
Compromise is when there is an actual commitment.
Yes.
So compromise is you've made a commitment, either you're exclusive or engaged or married, and now something's come up that
Mhm.
is new.
Yes.
Have made the decision that you want the relationship, and so now you have to sort of renegotiate the relationship around this new issue.
Yes.
What we do throughout marriage, like every
Mhm.
day. Every
Right.
day we're compromising and negotiating and rearranging all the time.
Yeah.
But when you're at the beginning, you've known someone for 2 weeks,
Yes.
you're not in a space to make a commitment. You don't know enough about that person to make a commitment,
Right.
which is the trap that the woman has usually fallen into, is that deep down she's made a commitment to this person even though she just met them, and so now she's
Yeah.
compromising and negotiating, which usually ends up with the person settling for less than
Yeah.
what was right for them.
Oh, I love your take on this because I think when you said that, I can imagine some of the listeners and some of the people watching, like being surprised, right? That you said compromise is for commitment, right? That's when, like you said, either we've had a serious conversation that we're being monogamous and it's leading to whatever, or we're engaged or we're married, right? That's where that truly comes in because I can just visualize, those of us who were single, we get into a new relationship and mentally we're just all in, right? We're all in more than that person even knows.
Mhm.
And it makes me think about a conversation we had when I was on your podcast. And remember, I shared with you that I always envied women who that they knew how to like kind of date around a little bit, right? Like at least like go on a couple different dates with different people. I never had the ability to, I wouldn't, well, let me not say I didn't have the ability. I never allowed myself to really try and do that, even though I always envied women who didn't just, they find someone and then that's it. Like you're locked down. This is it, no more, because I think sometimes you do end up settling.
100%. Because many times we don't actually know what we want or what's good for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
no there's no mold. There's no 10 features for each individual. Like every, I like to say it like this. Every person is like a universe unto themselves. So now you have two
Mhm.
people who are universes unto themselves. And
Mhm.
the energy that each person creates with a person is completely different. So you have this
Yeah.
woman dating this man, the energy and the relationship they create between them is completely different from
Yes.
the energy she's going to create with a different man that she dates.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
might like one energy better than the other.
That's right. That's
You know,
right.
you could have two guys that are, when it comes to the external attributes, they're the same. They make the same amount of money, they live in the same
Hmm.
city, drive the same car. All of the external attributes are exactly the same, and then the energy is so different.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and so I definitely encourage my clients to date around. I'm always the
Mhm.
last to co-sign on them going exclusive. I'm like,
You're like, not yet.
no, I don't know. Give it a couple more weeks, go on two more first dates. Just so
Yeah.
that they get a taste of what real men are like. Because that's the
Yeah.
other problem that comes up is you don't even know what a real man is like. You know your dad and your
Hmm.
brothers, the one guy you dated in college, and then your husband.
Hmm.
So like you know a total of like 6 men,
Right.
intimate level.
Oh my gosh, which is a big deal. Like, it's like we're in our 40s and 50s, but like you said, you've had like six experiences. And so it's just like pump the brakes, allow yourself to go and explore in a really healthy and safe way.
100%.
Yeah. So
100%.
good. I love that. I love that. Okay, something else that I said is in the field of work, the line of work that you and I are in. And I said, get coaching in the beginning and throughout your relationship once you've made a commitment, right? Because I think so many times people believe that coaching like is when things are just tough and down in the dumps, right? And you're wondering about should I even stay or should I stay or should I go? And so I think that's something that is important for, singles to think about when they are about to make a commitment and, you know, get married, that use mental health tools as as a support system for you throughout your relationship.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
That's one thing I wish we'd done sooner.
I
But
hear you. Me
just
too.
get coaching. And we
Yeah.
have a great relationship.
Yes. You
And
guys
I really,
do.
yeah, I think we started our first go at marriage therapy because we were both always open to, marriage therapy and marriage
Mm-hmm.
coaching,
Yeah.
but we didn't do anything. I think we did a seminar. We did our first, so during COVID, we got married in 2019. COVID was 2020. So I guess a year into our marriage. So we
Mm-hmm.
dated a year and then we'd been married a year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did our first. So we did like I think it was a 2 or 3 day virtual seminar during COVID,
Okay.
which was really nice. It was Harville Hendricks and
So
Helen Hunt.
familiar. Oh,
He
yes.
they wrote Getting the Love You Want and Keeping You
Yes.
Mind. Yeah. So we did a 3 day
I love that.
with them that first about a year in.
Yeah.
And then I think after that, maybe another 6 months after that, we hired a marriage therapist. It was just the how you say something is the coaching of the therapy was shallow. It could not have been any shallower.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I just was like, what is even happening here? Like,
Right.
you would do 30 minutes or 20 minutes, half of our session was just small talk.
Oh, no.
It was not great. Didn't help us
Mhm.
at all. And I think we didn't do anything after that. I think then we started like reading books together and kind of
Okay.
working out issues on our own before we actually signed up with you
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
work on it. And that's been great. And I think what the work we're doing with you is like would have been the perfect work to have done once we were exclusive or once we got engaged and then
Yes.
and I think I've sent at least 3 of my clients who went exclusive the last 3, 4 months. How long have we've been working together? four
It's
months.
about 4 months. Yeah.
So yeah, the
Yeah.
last the last few clients that went exclusive in those months, I have recommended, and then one client who came back
Yeah.
to work with me, and she wanted me to do some communication work with her and
Yeah.
her person.
Yes.
I was like, okay, you just really have to talk to Crystal. She's
Yeah.
way this than I am. I'm really great at the dating part, which I helped you with.
Yes.
At
Yes.
least maybe four.
Well, which is the ultimate compliment, by the way. So we didn't share this at the beginning, but I have the complete privilege of working with Sade and her husband, and they really do have a beautiful relationship. I remember that was something that I just sensed even within our first couple of sessions, and I tell them all the time, it's like, no matter what you're working on to make better, it's like you guys have such a firm foundation. And so, um, I think this conversation was so important for people to hear, just hearing from both sides, because dating once you're at our age, or those ladies of us who are a few years older or in their 50s and 60s, it really is different. And so I think having someone like you in their ear as saying, hey, consider this, what about this, remember this,
That's a
right?
lot of the work that I do is
Yeah.
not telling, and I always try to reassure my clients. I'm like, listen, I don't pick the person that you marry. So like you're
Right.
never gonna have to worry about she's gonna make me marry someone ugly that I don't like. Like, this is not an arranged marriage. I'm
Right.
just more. of a more objective pair of
Mhm.
eyes.
Yeah.
And anything I point out, e- even if even if it turns out to not be a thing, aren't you
Mhm.
glad you found out that it wasn't a thing? And if it
Exactly.
turns out to be a thing, wouldn't you be glad to
Yeah.
know that it was a
Yes.
thing?
Yeah.
I was coaching a client actually just yesterday, I believe, and
Mhm.
she found what seems like a person really quickly, like just in
Okay.
about a month of dating, which sometimes happens.
Yeah.
And so now she's at the place where she's like, I want to go exclusive. And we were like, okay, but
Mm.
let's put some what I do at that stage when someone meets someone that they really like. I say, let's put some let's just do some homework on the
Okay.
relationship just
Yes.
to establish that. And so I'll give them things like go on a double date,
Yes.
or go to a social event or go to church together if they're Christians or
Yes.
have a spiritual community. Little things like that that they can safely do to see other facets of that person.
Yeah.
They'll do things
Yes.
like that. Or in her case, spirituality was one of her biggest.
Okay.
I think she's sort of like an interfaith person, but
Mhm.
that spirituality practice is huge for her. Like it's
Mhm.
just a big deal.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons she's really excited about this person is because he's also a very spiritual person.
Yes.
However, his flavor of spirituality is
Mm.
from her. So she is more interfaith practices, spiritual, maybe new age practices, just a mixture of a lot of different things. His spirituality has more come out of the 12-step movement. So he's
Okay. Yeah.
very involved in the 12-step community, helping, has been a leader. And so in their case, there's actually almost a perfect match, but then there's this little
Mhm.
nuance that I pointed out to him. I said, the 12-step community is very specific because I've been
Yes.
through a 12-step program, loved it. I recommend them all the time. I think they're great. I still
Yes.
did mine. And I said it's a very specific
Yeah.
type of community in terms of the way the relationships are run. And so then I asked, I said, what does your social life look like? Because it
Mhm.
sounded like his social life might revolve around that community. And I said,
Right.
it's not that there's anything wrong with it. It just might be different from what you are looking for. And so you want to
Yes.
observe that and test that. And
Yeah.
it's not that it's a deal breaker or he's the wrong guy. It's just over the long term, if he goes and only does, because I think many 12-step programs they have conferences, they have retreats,
Mm.
all of his fun social events are centered around 12 steps.
Mhm.
A mismatch. And it's not a mismatch that means you don't marry him. It might be a
Right.
where you say, okay, hey, I'm not really getting ready to like do all of that with you, right?
Right. Yes.
Do we have a social area where we do
Yes.
overlap?
Yes.
So where I do some of that with you, you do a lot
Right.
more of it on your own, but then we have
Right.
this other space where we also do, I don't know, more regular, we go dancing or whatever.
Right, right. We have our thing, right, that we both are like in alignment with. And I love that you share that as an example because that's an example of something that's not necessarily a red flag, as we would say, but it's something to keep in mind that once say I do and begin this life with this person, that is what their version of being social or being interacting with their faith may look like. And maybe you had a different idea about that. And so it also makes me think about, the unspoken expectations that I talk a lot about in my work with clients. And sometimes I think a person will actually be very honest in not only their words, but their actions in showing us who they are in the beginning of the relationship. And we don't believe it. We're
We're like,
like, we're like,
no,
we're like, nah, like
that's not a thing. Everything that I was like, that looks like that might be a thing with my husband has totally turned out to be a thing. All the things
are things.
are things.
Yes.
They're not all things in the way I thought they were things,
Yeah.
but they are things. And I'll give you
Yeah.
an example. This is funny. So this is more, there's a little bit of me there and a little bit of him there. So I
Okay.
think on our fourth or fifth date, we'd gone on several dates and he always brought a nice like RAV4 to pick me
Yeah.
up and all of that, which I don't care about cars, but it was, nice.
Yeah.
And there was one day we were talking because we went exclusive fairly quickly.
Okay.
But even before we went exclusive, we were talking all the time.
Yes.
So we were talking at lunch one day at work, and I said, "Hey, do you want to get together after work?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's meet here, blah blah blah." And he's like, "Well, I'm bringing the van today." And I was like, "Okay, you have a van and a ride." Like it didn't register to me. And so then
Yeah.
we got to dinner, we're having dinner, and I said, "Well, why did you?" And so that was one of the things I was really good at, was if something popped up in my mind,
Yes.
I wouldn't gloss over it. I always try to be curious. And so I said, "Why did
Yes.
you want to give me a heads up that you were bringing your minivan?" Which was like a really old, it was like, it had 200,000 miles on it,
Okay.
16 years. Great car, great vehicle, but it was like
It,
the,
it-
the, the mileage was ticking up there. I said, "So
yes.
why did you think it was important for me to know that you were bringing your minivan?"
Yeah.
He was like, "Well, because I just always brought my mom's car to pick you up."
Hmm.
I was like, "You brought your mother's car? What kind of narcissist are you?" Like, I was like, and I think he was just shocked, like, why is that a thing? I'm like, "You lied to me.
That is
I
so
was like, you
funny.
don't care about, why couldn't you just bring your car so I could see who you really like?" We were there literally at that dinner table texting our friends. I texted my girlfriends. I was like, "Can you believe this?"
You lied to me.
He lied to me. What was
That is
interesting about that is, so I thought he was lying to me. That's not what was happening. What was
yeah.
happening was he was showing me that, look, I'm a really frugal guy. I
Yes. Uh-huh.
like to drive my cars all the way into the ground,
Yes.
and I like to eat at Taco Bell,
Right.
and I will turn out all the lights in the house 24/7.
Just save that extra dollar.
Right. And so everything that comes up is a thing. You may not know what
Yeah.
it is, but it is a
Right.
thing. And I don't think I realized what that thing meant until after we moved in together.
Yeah.
He would follow me around the house, turning out the lights
Feel
behind.
the lights.
Like, what's happening? I like the lights on. I wake up in the morning, I turn on all the lights,
All the lights.
all
He's
of them.
stressed. He's like, all the lights are on.
Yes.
Oh
So
my gosh.
that was the actual interpretation of the
Uh-huh.
flag that came up. But
Yes.
it's always a thing.
Yes. And I love how you shared that story in the beginning and how it transpired into current day, right? Again, it's like not something we need to divorce over, but it's like, that was him showing like a real part of his personality. But now that we are sharing life together, it looks like this,
Yes.
and another thing too that I want to say about that I think you'll agree with is that we as women, we have like those gut instincts for the big things and for the small things. And I think that that was a moment, right, where something relatively small, maybe you were just like, oh, that's interesting. So you were curious and did ask, which led him to telling you the truth, right? And you saw how that unfolded over the years. And so it's almost like there's when you have like a little gut instinct that maybe you're curious about something, like allow yourself to have that conversation because those are good habits that you want to build throughout a marriage anyway. You don't want to keep things in. You don't want to assume or like create a narrative in your head that's not true. Allow your partner, right, to fill in the question, right, with how what they want to share or their truth.
Oh yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That curiosity that you talked about is so important.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's hard to be curious when you're attached. You're
Yeah.
like, ah, and
Yes.
that's exactly what happened in my first marriage. Was I think just the toxicity was so high, but I wouldn't let
Mm.
myself see it. I gave
Mhm.
myself every reason to not see it or to not deal with it because I was attached to having the perfect Christian marriage, and Christians didn't
Yeah.
divorce. And for sure, I did. I believe other Christians divorced. That
Other
was
did, right. Right.
wasn't
Not
me.
over here. Yes.
I was
Yes.
the girl who was a virgin getting married. Well, this
Yes.
work.
Yeah, you were like, I am following the book.
Yes. So that attachment kept me from seeing the
Yeah.
things that I needed to see and be curious about what I should have been asking questions about, both
Yeah.
before the marriage and during the marriage.
And during, yes. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing those stories because it really, I think both those examples that you gave in both your relationship prior and your current, I really believe like the listeners can find a way to transfer that to their life and be like, am I doing that? Have I been doing that? And so I just love this conversation with you so much. And before we go, I wanted to ask, there's one more suggestion that I have, and I wanted to see if there's any other last words of wisdom you want to share. And the last thing I have on my list is have fun, because I think, right, for married couples, especially when once kids are involved, I think sometimes many of us can get to like tipping our toe on the border of, household partners or roommates.
Yeah.
It's like, who takes the kids, dentist appointment at this time, I got to work, you know what I mean? And so it's almost like allow yourself to have fun.
Yeah.
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 Anything you wanna.
I call them the logistics conversations.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I hate those. Like
Yeah.
there was a period in my marriage to Kent where I was like, I think we're just having logistics conversations here. I'm not enjoying this at all.
This isn't fun.
This isn't fun. And yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think married couples could learn that from just the
Mhm.
moment of the prior to commitment stage. But I think part of
Yes.
what comes with that is maintaining a sense of autonomy.
Yeah. Tell me
Like,
more.
why not see yourselves as separate individuals
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
marriage?
Yes.
I know for me as a recovering people pleaser, that helps me a lot
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
myself as almost like in my mind a single woman,
Yeah.
but I have a boyfriend.
Uh-huh. Right? It
Right?
reminds you of choice, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It reminds me that I'm choosing him. And it also
Yes.
reminds me that it gives me a sense of 100% of radical responsibility.
Yeah. Mhm.
So if something's going wrong in our space or something needs to
Mhm.
be cleaned up or something needs to be done, I mean, of course, I want him to do his part.
Mhm.
However, if I
Mhm.
think of myself as a single woman living in
Mhm.
this house and I have roommates, like I said,
Mhm.
so he's my
Mhm.
roommate, how would I handle this situation?
Yeah.
When we
Yes.
think of ourselves as married, as defined by the cultural narrative, it tends to be, oh, great, I got to do all the cleaning and I
Yes.
up and he never and men never.
Yeah.
But if you were in a roommate situation, you would be like, hey, buddy,
Mhm.
you need to do your dishes. You can't be leaving dishes around here. I don't know you from Adam.
Right, right, exactly.
I think there's an element of being autonomous even within that relationship that can be really helpful for you seeing where you end and the other person begins,
Yeah.
and helps you set appropriate boundaries that do help you keep the romance going.
Yes. I love that you shared that because it kind of goes along with how we were talking earlier about just not being consumed, right, by that person, especially after you get married. And I'm glad you mentioned that, especially according to like how society may like define you as a married woman, I think specifically, right? And so, yeah, allow some autonomy. So
Yeah.
that, and I think that that serves so many purposes, including like keeping the spark, keeping the curiosity, the self-agency that you experience, like taking on that role, knowing that at no matter what, I know that I got this, right?
Mhm.
And it all, and sometimes it as I hear you share it, it almost makes me think of, that our spouses, like when we're kind of in that mindset, they're just like a bonus,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
don't know. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
exactly how I think of it. I
Yeah.
don't think of it as this institution that I need to uphold,
Right.
which is what I did the first time, and that was not good.
Uh-huh.
My
Uh-huh.
spouse is a choice that I'm making. It's a person that I
Yes.
want to have in my life.
Yes.
There's not, it's because if you think about it, like just going back to the roommate situation, if you're a single woman living in a, like a shared Airbnb kind of situation. So you
Mhm.
have your own room and your, co-ed, maybe there are guys who have the other rooms and you all share a kitchen and maybe you share a
Mhm.
bathroom. How that's actually not very different from being a married couple.
Mhm.
except maybe you have the same bedroom. But many married couples have separate bedrooms. If one
That
snores
that
or
is
and
true.
I know I've considered separate bedrooms sometimes just because, like, as you know, we're night out. I'm a morning person. He's a night.
Yes.
I know I
Yep.
do separate bedrooms where you can come visit, and then
Right.
so
And
I
I
can get
feel
up and turn the light on at 4 in the morning.
so I can have all the lights on in my suite, right?
Yeah, and so when you think about the actual circumstance or the actual situation, they're almost exactly alike.
Yeah.
But then the thinking is so different.
Right.
And in both situations, at least we're talking about the marriage situation, we have these rules and these definitions that
Hmm.
create so much unhappiness.
Yeah.
Where now it's almost like I have to do this and I have to
Hmm.
be this person and I have to sleep in the same room and I have to
Hmm.
whatever it is. But it's
Yes.
not really. You can configure your relationship anyhow you want.
You really can. And it's so interesting because I'm glad you brought that up because we didn't talk about that, even though that is such a truth that there are many married couples who are happily married who sleep separately. Because I kid you not, every now and again, I was like, if we had a separate bedroom in here when my husband gets to snoring at night, I'm like, we could both have very peaceful nights rest in separate rooms and like come together every now and again. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
I love the idea of that because I think it actually it keeps it curious,
Mhm.
right? It keeps it fun, interesting, and yeah, that's
It
interesting.
allows for self-expression. Both parties
Yes.
get their own self-expression, and you solve either the snoring problem or the night owl,
Yep.
morning bird problem,
Hmm.
and still get to enjoy everything else.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought that up and we just kind of talked about it for a little bit because maybe there's a listener who has been wanting to sleep separately or something like that, but they're afraid, to have that conversation. And I think if you maybe first have this conversation with yourself from the perspective that we're sharing it in a very healthy minded, right? Like this isn't a way to create distance. It's quite the opposite. Right. And so maybe if you're hearing this and this is something that's like on your spirit to have in your household, maybe think of it like this when you're having a conversation with your spouse about it. Never
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
100%. And if you're single and are considering it an unusual, quote unquote unusual, because who defines normal configuration?
Right.
Allow yourself to explore it. I mean, one of my I took a lot of psychology classes right after my divorce. I was
Hmm.
thinking about becoming a therapist, changed my mind about that, thank God. I love life coaching way more. But one of my professors would have the students, he would have us out at his home for like helping profession circle kind of thing. And so we would
Okay.
a potluck, we'd all bring something to eat. We'd talk about all kinds of like psychology concepts.
Yeah.
And he lived in a condo complex.
Hmm.
His wife lived in the condo across from his.
Oh my
They
goodness.
did not live in the same condo. So he had his
Wow.
condo, but it was just they picked the ones right across from each other.
Yes. Wow.
And I was like, when I saw that, I was like,
I love that.
available? I was into it.
Right. And I look, I love that word that you just said. This is available,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's what people need to know. So much is available to you that maybe because of some old beliefs or, stories that you've been believing or you're worried about the in-laws or friends thinking of you a certain way, you're not allowing yourself to be, open to having that conversation, but it is available to you. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
100%. And that was actually my thing before I met Kent. I was like, yeah, I want someone that'll live in the villa opposite mine or whatever. And then
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, I think I'd like to be a little closer
Yeah.
in the
You're
same house.
like, we'll start off closer, maybe eventually.
So I kind of like him in arm's reach.
There you go. I love this, Sade. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for just coming and sharing your take on it, which I love the way that your brain works around, divorce singles and how they should be, or not how, but how they should, but, some ways that they can show up in their dating life that will serve them for the long run.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being such an amazing coach. Like we
oh,
really love
thank
you. We
you.
love working with you. Everything is like I was like, oh, this is the thing that we were looking for. It was just that
Yeah.
like that missing piece in our
Yeah.
relationship, just that. And I keep using the word that you use, over communicating. I'm like, that's
Yes.
it. We
Yeah.
need to be more curious. That's the thing. We need to like spell things out and not make
Yes.
assumptions. And that concept and teaching of yours has just really changed. It's been a game changer for us.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And I think I so receive that. And thank you so much. And I think the reason why that stands out to me is because I realized like a few years ago that I really wasn't doing that in my relationship. So that was like one area that stood out like a sore thumb. And so I was like, I gotta work on that. I even though I'm working on it and I think that I'm not making assumptions to a certain degree, I still am, right? And then when those assumptions are made and they're off or whatever, that leaves room for that friction, that
Yeah.
disconnect, like we're saying, which is the opposite of what we want. And so it really is because that was my story just a few short years ago. And so I keep it top of mind. And luckily I get to work on it with like beautiful couples like you and your husband. And so it helps me also, right, be very top of mind to over communicate. Yeah,
Oh,
so
thanks
good.
so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. In the show notes below, I'll have information on how to connect with Sade. So feel free to connect with her on her podcast, which is called Dating After Divorce. It's a great podcast. I've subscribed myself, and I just love hearing her stories, whether it's a solo episode or she has a guest on, and then any other social handles, that type of thing. I'll make sure I have that in the show notes. All right, everyone, have a beautiful day. Until next time.